Welcome to the hot seat tonight. My name is Derek Wandera. For this week's episode of Journalists and Pundits, to delve into issues that have made headlines this week. I am having three panelists, but most importantly, one who had disappeared for over a year, and he's here, Raymond Mujuni. How are you, and where have you been?
You see the problem. You haven't been listening to the show. I was here 3 weeks ago
and hosted. Yeah.
Yes,
really?
I hosted.
Since he came back.
Yes. So I've been here once since I returned.
Okay. Welcome back. I think it's my first time to be with you on this show. Frank Mujimba. How are you, Frank?
I'm okay. How are you, Wandera?
And Jimmy Achelam.
Yes.
You're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek. Thanks for having me.
This show begins on a somber mood because one of us that we have been with in the field, been within the tunnels of journalism and really written those very hard stories within the security circles. He was writing stories of security and current affairs. Rizdale Kasasira succumbed to accident wounds, this evening. This afternoon, and I want us to take just a minute to pay him that tribute, but also we have just some minutes to speak about him and just try to take ourselves down memory lane. May his soul rest in peace. And I want to begin with you, Raymond, because I know that you and myself sat with Rizdale in the newsroom for so many times. I know for sure that sometimes you interviewed some sources together, and you collaborated on some stories or even shared bylines. What is that very fundamental memory of you and him?
I met Rizdale, I think, in 2012. He was reporting on a story. It was a walk-to-work story at the time, when the FOC was being formed. I met him through another friend of ours who since left journalism, called John Njoroge. The two of them used to report together. And KB had passed on some information to me, and then he said, you can give it to whatever channel. So that's my very first time I met Rizdale was that time. And then Rizdale and I went together to Somalia in 2013 when the then CDF Katumba Omala was visiting the troops. We spent some time in Barawe when they were conducting operations there. He was a very fantastic reporter with very good sources in the army. Rizdale and I spoke, if I show you the messages, we spoke at length about stories that were coming from the military. I remember he when he had just authored the story that got the Daily Monitor closed, he had asked that we continue the story even when he thought that he would be arrested. He was invited to make a statement at CPS at the time and said this story should continue. The document had come from General Tinyafuza then, and only about 4 people had eyes on it. I was lucky to be among the 4, and it was really I'd say Rizdale was a very committed reporter. He understood a news story. He knew a news story when he saw one. Rizdale, many people actually do not know this. Rizdale had a lot of friends and family in the army, and they were very unhappy with him on the way he reported about the UPDF. But he broke a lot of the stories about UPDF corruption and the like. But he also wrote very good stories about the UPDF in terms of institutional growth and development. So we will definitely miss him. He was a very senior figure in the newsroom. It's sometimes hard, The newsrooms are very complicated places. If you wanted a story on the UPDF now, I don't know who would write it. I really don't know who would write it. And I don't know if the new crop of reporters in the newsroom are building the kind of sources that Rizdale has built. But he served his time. He gave his life to journalism. of course, he loved a good party.
Yeah.
There are many nights we went out and didn't leave until possibly 6, 7 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, but it was very terrible to hear that he had passed on today. The car he was in, the wife was driving the car, skidded into a swamp, and he was on the side that was underwater, submerged. Yeah, so we will miss him. And like they say, our day will also come. Then
So
we can
all
be
the other
reunited.
occupants of the car survived?
Yes, all the other occupants of the car, including his 2 children, have survived. Yeah.
Yeah, I met Rizdale in 2015. Towards the end of 2015, and I joined the Daily Monitor early 2016 there. Rizdale, for one reason or the other, loved me like a young brother. I was fresh from university, hardly had much experience in writing news, had news stories, but of course I'd been writing feature stories and stuff like that. I entered the newsroom and I'm trying to find bearing of which bit it is that I can do, and Rizdale got my hand and always dragged me to CMI, always dragged me to ISO and stuff like that. Rizdale was rich with the sources in there. There is a story I remember that we broke about AMISOM. Some of the soldiers there were complaining they had not gotten their monies, and even when the monies came, they had just been given like half of it. Rizdale had all the sources, but he told me, Derek, you're going to be the lead on this story, and it was a very good story. I remember we even interviewed that gentleman from this studio here, and we partnered with Solomon Kawesa. But Rizdale knew this person, but said, Derek, you have to be the lead on this story. And I remember it was among my first deep investigative stories, and Rizdale said, you have to do it. And through that, I got so many sources in the army as well. By the time Rizdale was leaving, I was his deputy lead of security and politics. And when he leaves, I took over as lead politics and security. And I grew in his arms. Very humble guy. Even his speech, even when he's talking to you, he's very humble. And of course, yeah, those parties were always there in our places, our kafundas, and honestly, it's with a very, very heavy heart.
He was also a very talented parliamentary reporter. You know,
Yeah,
this was another bit that he handled. Him and Isaac Imaka at the time, they broke some of the best stories out of that parliament. And I have a hunch and a feeling that Kadaga's directive to kick reporters out of parliament started with Rizdale's stories. There's no other explanation for it. It was Rizdale who was incessantly breaking those stories on parliamentary committees, on travel and allowances, who was getting what allowances. He had done his homework at the time he was in parliament. So he's going to be all-round mister in journalism.
Rizdale was a real journalist.
Yeah.
That he was that thorough that you come to him with a story and he will tell you, you man, this is a very good story. This is a very good story. Let's just it. And that's how he used to speak. Frank, what do you remember about? Did you ever get chance to interact with Rizdale?
Not as such. I think I have not, first of all, interacted with him at a personal level. And I think he was this background journalist, a writer. Maybe he was not an active journalist or a reporter or something like that. He was maybe on TV and other media stations. I believe he was a writer. That's what I would want to get from you. So, but it's still death of a journalist, and I think the job of a journalist, these are people who normally have a lot of information that they can always write about, and it shapes the narratives in a country. So I think it is really unfortunate. I'm thinking about what story was he going to maybe to write next, if he had lived to see another day. maybe you would have wanted to see, let's say, his analysis or his forecast about the year 2025. So it's really unfortunate, and may his soul rest in peace.
Chefe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
What do you remember about Rizdale?
Once again, good evening to our listeners. I think I'm on the same path with my friend here. I didn't get the opportunity to interact with him personally. However, his work as a journalist was extremely consequential, that you kept hearing the name come up in very serious conversations, especially in reportage surrounding the military and other political issues that used to come up in the newspapers. Particularly to know that he is among the journalists who broke the story on the MK project a decade before it was the MK project. And that his journalism was so consequential that it remains relevant to date, despite how high the stakes were at that time. Because I think the Christians say that we shall be known for our works, for our deeds, and that to know that a piece of journalism has remained consequential in an environment where stories come and die within a single news cycle. 48 hours after something, you don't recall what the headline was. To see that someone put in their work and there's a headline that still rings true to this date on an issue that is as pertinent as the succession of political leadership in this country, I think that for his works, he did his best. He did the best he could, and I find that very inspiring at a personal level, but even at a professional level for the upcoming journalists who would like to do something consequential, who would like to contribute in their line of work. Rizdale presents you with that perfect opportunity to aspire to. And as again the Christians say that it is Twen and Gumhanda, it is the way for all of us. Yes.
Those are Christians, though.
No, those are Christians. Most importantly, there's someone who recently told me that because death is guaranteed, it's how obvious it is. The obvious nature of death robs it of its power. To know that it is a given, it is then no longer profound, because then it's everyone's portion. So eternal repose to the man, and it is definitely a loss to the journalism community in Uganda.
Jimmy, just what you remember about and recollect about Rizdale?
Well, I didn't meet him in person. I read his works, and for a long time, I started coming to this media house around 2005-06. But the place is so big.
When I was in P7.
The place is so big that you cannot literally meet everyone. So sometimes I know it was with the Emmanuel Geizaho at the time. The writers, you enjoy the Sunday Monitor, it was the analysis, the politics. But most importantly, he wrote 2 very good essays for the Uganda Review. Sons of the Resistance, explaining the MK, and very, very deep. And another one,
the co-presidency of Saleh.
Then till the end, the rebirth of Salim Saleh. Those are very difficult areas, essays to deeply analyze, and first of all, they are very sensitive. If his style of writing, you'll want to read those essays again and again. So when you read, you would understand what kind of a writer he was. So it's really sad. He was a very experienced.
It's unfortunate that the old man is not here, but after that essay on Salim Saleh, Saleh actually asked to meet Rizdale personally and talk to him, because Saleh said that Rizdale had written without meeting him.
Yes, it was actually.
So did they actually meet?
I don't know if they met.
You don't really have to meet them. From sources, you have to read those 2 essays. You really know what kind of a writer he was. He was very deep,
Myself and Rizdale, we broke the story of the firing of the former ISO boss, Kaka Bajenda. And I remember still him sending me. I remember him telling me almost at midnight, we were here trying to finish the story, but we needed Kaka to speak. And he was calling Kaka, and Kaka was just putting him off and told me, one day I come, can you call Kaka? That man, you call him. I called Kaka, and Kaka picked. and we broke the story. We had the biggest story in the morning, and that was like,
it was during COVID.
Yeah, around there.
And been torturing people and taking them to the island.
It was a big story, but yeah, Rizdale certainly will remain in the newsrooms of many people as some of the people that he mentored, that he saw through the ranks, taking path. Some of them even picked his writing styles and stuff, and he has been very, very important. Let's go for a quick commercial break, and when we return, we shall delve into some of the topics that we have to handle tonight. Welcome back from that quick commercial break. My name is Derek. I have Jimmy Achelam. I have Chefe. The other name is Tigushamwa. I have Frank Mujimba and I have Raymond Mujuni. We were just taking our strolls down the memories of our departed brother Rizdale Kasasira. But may his soul remain resting in peace until we meet him. Like Tigushama said, Turiyaham hand. That those are Christians. Anyhow, I want us to delve into some of the topical issues. I want to pick a mind from each of you on what you think is going to shape the political atmosphere of 2025, knowing that this is a very political year. Basically, 2026 is for voting, but the real politics is in this year, campaigns and everything. Jimmy, what do you expect to shape the politics of this year?
I think first to begin with the president's opinion, message, or like on police bond, bail. Will some politicians survive? Maybe they will be put out for a long time. You take a really long time to get out of the. What was his? Why did he particularly focus on this police bond and bail? Was he looking at the politicking that is coming up? How maybe the opposition will behave, or usually is obviously targeting politicians in opposition, not really people in the ruling government. So it's going to be a very.
Frank will say no.
It's going
I thought he was talking about thieves.
No. That is just used as a fraud, but behind it is
okay. Maybe that is your interpretation.
When he talks, you don't take his message literally. You have to understand what is behind it. What is the?
So why would he say that? Yeah. Why now?
So it's going to be a big contest between the opposition and people in the ruling party. It's really a period of preparing for the election, as they say. So putting out your messages, trying to, the organization, will the opposition be more organized? Will they try to come together to focus on one, the opponent, the one who is ruled forever? So it's going to be a period of just politicking mainly. I think the media will be focused more on coverage of political events. The Democratic Alliance, the National Unity Platform, the new party at Katonga, and then of course the Besigye's case is going to be how it will be handled will determine so many things. Will Martha Karua be allowed to lead? How will the execution of the before the court, how will it go? Will it be the court martial? Because him being in prison, the opposition will lack a lot of guidance. So I think him getting out is for them is a priority now, so that they see how they go forward. And it's a concern not only for it's a concern for NUP, it's a concern for all opposition people politicians in opposition political parties. Right. I think also some members of the NRA are concerned, the NRA, the ruling party, concerned about what goes on. Those will have fairness. They want him out so that you can't complain that, the man was locked up, he had no chance, and there was no organization. So the earlier he gets out, so then you have a seemingly, fair playing ground. Yeah.
Tigushamo.
Thank you very much, Wandera. I think two things. The first, is we are going to see a significant test of our multi-party democracy at the point of primaries. Last time you had a wave. That red wave allowed everyone and their followers to obtain a ticket with very little contestation, because the people at where were the headquarters of NUP in the last election? They were not in Kamocha. They were not in Kamocha. Yeah. Yes. So because the people at Kamocha could decide unilaterally who was the ticket holder. But we've had 5 years of an interesting parliamentary term. And so for the first time we are going to see internal rifts, and because we've already seen signs and symptoms of that during the course of their term. I'm imagining it's going to become very accelerated.
Are you saying some cards are not returning to the...
I definitely believe so. Believe so. But also that the party has matured a bit to allow... there's no more excitement coming from a wave. This time there's going to be a bit of strategy on their part. But also that cuts across to the NRM. The NRM has the most violent party primaries in this country. Yes, because both warring parties are always big shots in some way.
That's true.
And so if it plays out in the opposition and plays out in the ruling party, then we will see the
country of
mayhem.
Keto and something. What do I say about ketos and blacks? The second thing is the messaging. This term, 2021-2026, the president has very committedly put in every financial year at least 2 trillion in the hands of peasants, because he has given up on you people in towns. You people decided to speak a lot of English, so he has gone to do his politics for his mwananchi, the wananchi. And so through MYOGA, through the parish development model, and with your budget whose fiscal space is always constantly reducing, between your debt service payments and your wage bill, your fiscal space, the money you can spend discretionary, he has decided to commit it to MYOGA and PDM. And so I'm waiting to see the interesting messaging in his campaign, because it has already started off with the regional PDM tours, which I thought was strategic on his part, because he is simply saying to the people of the villages that this is your cake, this is your share of the national cake. It might be small, but people have not been getting crumbs.
So he started...
because I'm assuming previously it was infrastructure where the money comes from central bank and goes to Standard Chartered to finance a contractor to do a road to Kumi. The money never reaches Kumi. The people of Kumi simply receive new gravel on which to lay their maize. But this time he has taken that expenditure and given it to
the roads.
Yes. No, I mean, this time I can tell you, with the way the parish development model was structured, you can steal maybe 20%, but you cannot steal 50%. Because they send that money to SIM cards with a NIN number. So how many NIN numbers are you going to fake for 1 million to be able to... You understand? So the messaging is also going to be very important, and that means that the ruling party has little to no interest in urban populations and their rigmarole and their sensibilities. The real work has gone to the countryside, where people have been beneficiaries of this money, small as it might be. They are the grassroots, and they are the majority. So I would like to see how the opposition counters that messaging, especially since the president has washed his hands off their core base, as if to say, you can have that, I have somewhere else to base my support on. Those are the two things. Between the primaries, party primaries, and the messaging for this election, that is what I think would change, would differ.
Absolutely. It's certainly going to be a very good field day for President Museveni, especially after giving that car money for PDM. I've been to my village and yes, you can hear the voices of people.
I'm telling you, maybe not everyone, but the ones who need it have received it. Even the ones who are cheated, they got 600,000. But previously they had never got what? Anything. A single thing from the government of Uganda. And those people... The
problem is that they don't take back that money.
No, this is another thing. It's a communication gap. Government of Uganda does not want that PDM money back. It's called a parish revolving fund. That even if you are to pay back that money, it would go to the circle council of your parish to allow the parish lend another person in that. So by defaulting on that loan, you are defaulting on your own community.
That's true.
Government of Uganda does not want that money back into its coffers.
I should have brought in Chefe last, but I'm going to bring Frank last. Let me go to
It speaks like the PDM
of course,
spokesperson.
the spokesperson of PDM.
I should tell you, for the first time, government of Uganda has made it easier for sitting MPs to campaign. Because there is when you say that the roles of a member of parliament are to legislate, to oversee, to appropriate, and to represent. A lot of that work, you rely on the work of the central government to be able to base on. Your work is its foundation.
But that is going to be a bargaining chip for only NRM.
No, but even, you see, let me tell you, the most progressive NUP MP is Goreti Namuga, Maogola South. And she sits down and has meetings with her PDM committees in each parish, because she understands that as an NUP member of parliament you might not support the government in power, but if your own voters are beneficiaries of this money and it really is reaching them, why must it take on the partisan note? You can go and beat the government for all the other reasons, but if it has delivered PDM, sit with the parish chiefs, sit with the LC2 chairman, see how the disbursement is going, solve whatever problems you possibly can, and you too as an opposition member of parliament will take credit for this government service. So I can tell you that this one is not even partisan. Unless you hear an NUP member of parliament saying, have you met anyone saying, please don't receive that money, don't receive Museveni's 1 million? They can't. I'm telling the politics of it is
I can confirm to you that Chefe is the right one.
When do we get our payment for this PDM advert that you have run?
For us in towns, they have given up on us. So they are giving only the people in the village.
Yes, because you bring 1 million per family in Kampala, people will say, what is that? Even in the villages, they had decided to say, that is very little money, because in the newspapers we have billions and billions and billions. But I'm telling you, there are 15,000 parishes in Uganda. Each parish gets 50 million quarterly or something of that sort. The annual figure is 2 trillion. Now, you go and look at your budget. After paying debts and salaries, how much are you left with? How much of that has gone to PDM? This country now belongs to the villagers. They have family in charge.
Raymond, I want to bring you in here.
I've lived long enough to know politics. Incidentally, I think that the NRM hasn't yet woken up to the challenges they're about to face with the PDM. If I just speak, for example, for my village, we vote the NRM 99%, some days 101%.
101.
101. Toro is 101 from 70. But there's an upsetting of the apple cart with this PDM money. The traditional NRM structures were pushed aside because they were seen as inefficient. And that money, so it appended the structure. Now the Gomborola and parish chiefs are slightly more important than the NRM chiefs. In few cases, do you have that office being occupied by the same person? There's going to be a massive conversation around who got, who didn't get PDM money, who benefited, who didn't benefit from PDM money. And sadly, again, it's going to be a very violent contest. I can already see the primary election. I've been the target of some misinformation. People think I'm going to run for an election. So I've seen the messaging coming to my phone. People saying, come to our sub-county and campaign because this PDM money is not coming. I think politics is too hard to predict. There are so many black swan events. I tend to imagine the election is not yet even started until we have the formal constitutional amendments that government will bring. We do not know what's being cooked in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We do not know when it will come, how it will come, in the manner in which it will come. We typically, every election cycle, have at least one of those events. Is it Tojikwatak or is it term limit? So we're waiting to see what is the mega event that will sprawl down into the smaller events. I get the feeling that Museveni doesn't want to campaign this electoral season. I think these PDM tours are his campaign. I don't imagine that he will be out there in the fields doing 140 something rallies as he typically does in every election cycle.
And he avoided campaigns even last election.
Yes. Fortunately and unfortunately also, there will be some political problems. As you've already seen, there's an increasing crime rate in urban areas, which is unchecked and untended to. There's a complete breakdown in public services within the city center. The punitive measures of those things are very high. The other thing that the PDM has done is that previously, NRM wheeler dealers who used to fund elections used to get their money through government contracts. Now, it's typically very hard to get any government contract funded. I know people who are contractors of government approved by the Solicitor General with a blue letter from the government of Uganda, and they haven't yet been paid. And it's going to also be a balance of probabilities. Who do you appease, who do you not appease heading to the election? Because the traditional elite of the NRM are really very unhappy right now. Based on how the money is flowing, they are no longer in charge of the money now. They are seeing the money in the villages. And yet the machinery, the voters can vote, but the machinery that delivers the NRM is the NRM elite back here in the city. So we're going to have a contestation.
that is not true.
Let's go for a quick commercial break, and when we return, you'll complete your submission, and we shall hear from Frank.
Day 7 to 8 p.m.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break. My name is Derek. I'm still with your very good panelists and journalists. I have seen they have taken the path of PDM, Katas of Chefe, and it's okay.
2025 is an electoral year.
And what, Raymond, you were summarizing.
There are really other things we have to worry about. I think this is going to be a very difficult year. Not just it's going to be a difficult year for politicians. I've seen the speed and scale with which the CID is starting to work around corruption cases, around cases like BOU. It's going to be a very difficult year for people who are accounting officers. If people continue to leak documents in the manner in which we've seen them being leaked, we are going to have a lot of accounting officers ending up before courts of law and being prosecuted for things like that. I'm also interested in seeing what the year will look like for the Ugandan opposition. I know behind the scenes that there is some talking going on. I don't imagine that a coalition will emerge, but I think some pointed thinking might happen around the opposition. I think this time, more than the last time, there's very little appetite to fund the opposition in the coming election from the from the traditional sources of funding that they traditionally get their money from. So
you mean the foreigners?
Not the foreigners.
I don't suspect there is indigenous funding.
People who fund them. So it's going to be a very difficult time also for the opposition. They will have to some way work together around candidates, around picking who will run in what election. I've already seen,
but we might see bad money still coming through. The bad money
of course,
dirty one.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. It's also going to be an interesting season to watch between us and the region. I think that Kenyans and Tanzanians are watching very keenly what's happening in Uganda. The Tanzanians are not afraid, not ashamed. I've had some of the CCM rallies, people talking about Uganda like it's some backward district that they run. They're saying, if the Ugandans don't get their act in order, we will get it in order for them. So it's going to be very interesting to watch what that relationship looks like, because the oil supposedly has to flow March 2026. So we will need to see that oil at some point. I'm also very interested to see the rise of these social artists who've become the dominant conversation subject. Week on week, we have some issue, some artist who becomes the dominant issue.
I was told Nina Rose wants to stand as a Zimbabwe woman.
No, away from the politics, they will also be very determinant in the way that people perceive of politics, the way that people perceive of society. So I'm also keen to watch, see that happen.
About politicians using some of the very unruly,
it's very unfortunate.
I recall one time we came to radio and people wanted to discuss Mpuga, and I begged them, I said, please do not make that money topic. No sooner had I than alien skin began.
Yeah, so those things are going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be a very difficult year for journalism also. I think that we might see some papers folding this year. From what you can tell, the numbers are not looking good at all across the board. So new forms of information are going to emerge. TikTokers, bloggers are going to become more important than some of the traditional newsrooms we've had. My prayers remain for outfits like the Monitor, Observer. I pray that we find a way to turn this around. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to try and raise money in a very competitive electoral cycle. But also, I'm also looking forward to the good graces. I think that I want to see more medals for Joshua Cheptegei. He's going to be in the 21s and the 42s in the coming year, so it's very interesting to look forward to that too. Jacob Kiplimo is coming straight into the 10 kilometers, and we saw him doing some massive work. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's also going to be interesting because we're going to be preparing for AFCON. I don't know why we're not discussing this. Our bad manners are going to be on display for the entire Africa.
I find that interesting.
Yeah, but I've been shown pictures from Hoima Stadium. I think they're doing great on the Hoima Stadium.
I saw they recently broke ground for a stadium in northern Uganda.
Akibua is not doing well, but I
is
think
it an AFCON pitch as well?
Well, it's one of those highlighted to be an AFCON pitch. So it's going to be interesting to also see how fast we get our act together, because AFCON is a major event across the African continent, and it's going to drag so many people. I hope our politics doesn't interfere with AFCON.
No, our politics can happen separately.
Some countries,
for us, we shall go to the stadium.
Some countries outside the original hosting three are waiting for one country to fail so that they can take over. So it's going to be interesting.
And you know which country they are praying.
I don't want to say it. Those are my in-laws, so
Frank.
let us not get into the debate.
Frank, talk to me. So NRM this year.
First of all, I would want to commend Chefe. I don't know why he has been lost for this long. Why did you get lost?
No, Chefe just turned around close to the end of this year. Last year, he just turned around from nowhere and he's now speaking.
It's Christmas money.
I think.
I want to state categorically that the NRM cannot afford to pay me.
But individuals within NRM can afford,
pay you.
can't they?
No, but you see, that's another important thing. Eh? If you can't see the strengths of someone you allegedly or perceivably do not agree with, then that's a blind spot on your part. I have always been very skeptical of the way the NRM does some of its stuff. But for this one, this was a genius.
You know, PLE is looking for a new committee. I think you're auditioning.
No.
He's trying them. Like, I'm here.
Yeah, so
Frank.
Wandera, I don't think, okay, when you compare to the previous elections that we've had, it's, first of all, you should ask yourself questions. Have maybe if you to have a different kind of election in 2026, you should ask yourself questions. For example, have the players changed? Have the laws that govern the elections in Uganda changed? The appointment of people, has it changed? I think as we know that people like the president of National Unity Platform have already confirmed that they're actually going to contest. I think the president has not yet confirmed, but maybe
the president was
how many confirmations do you need?
they confirmed him in 2022
has not confirmed.
February.
So
they said sole candidate in 2022
so
February.
If we still have the same players, the same electoral laws, modus operandi almost the same, so I really don't think that anything significant is really going to change. But the only change that can happen is when we, as the citizens, as the people of Uganda, decide on that particular day to go and cast our votes and then go back to our homes. That's when we can make a change. That's when we shall not see what we call political prisoners if we do not choose to misbehave, burn tires, burn people's cars, attack people.
So basically,
from different.
You are saying the rights to freedom of expression should go out of the window.
but it also depends on how you express yourself. But for starters, I think even before we get to the elections, the fixture that is actually coming up is the party primaries, and I think we've seen before what what happens in these primaries, especially the NRM. I think we've already seen the heat coming up in Remiaga. You've seen Theodore Sechkubo, the honorable, the area member of that, area member of parliament of that particular area. I think there are people who are trying to bring another person to contest.
People are trying to liberate Remiaga.
to liberate Remiaga. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see how the NRM handles its primaries to make sure that it does not actually affect them. And we've also seen in the by-elections that have ended, you've seen that in most cases the NRM candidate loses and the independent, who is normally NRM leaning, wins. So it will be interesting. Shall we be seeing the number of independent members of parliament increasing in the next parliament? So that is also to watch. That is also there for us to watch. But also maybe what is interesting in the opposition, I think in 2021 this was a new political party, the political party that is of the opposition, the National Unity Platform. I think the people did not get a chance to actually assess these people. As long as one carried a manvuri, it was a vote. But I think the citizens, the people, the population that these people are actually representing have gotten enough time to actually assess them and see if they can actually represent them again. So I think this time round we shall be able to have what should I call it, a fair contest. Maybe the population will be able to choose, not because someone is just carrying a manvuri, but someone who is significant to cause a change in that particular area. So I think those are some of the things that will be we shall be able to look out for.
Do you honestly think in a year in which Parliament has been branded corrupt, in which people have been kidnapped and lost and disappeared, do you think that voters are going to be forgiving?
No.
Will there be any discernment on the ballot box?
That is the folly of a spent force. You remember the euphoria that came with the National Unit Platform's wave was that hope. And that this hope has been lived through for 5 years with close to no impact on the people on the ground who voted for it. And even at the peak of that wave, the NRM managed to secure 12 members of parliament in Uganda. No, in Greater Masaka, not Uganda, Greater Masaka alone, at the peak of that wave. I wonder if the folly of a spent force will play out now, because then they didn't say, there was no track record to refer to. Now there is.
I think that you're underestimating the capacity of particularly urban regions and their discontent with the NRM. I don't think that people voted, some people voted the National Unity Platform because of the hope it represented, but majority of it was a protest vote. And I think that protest vote has continued all through the times. The National Unity Platform is just going to go into this contestation saying, look here, this MP took money from Anita Mom. This MP took money.
Raymond, let's go for a quick commercial break, and when we return, we shall wrap it up. Welcome back. My name is Derek. Let's go for this last segment of the show. I want to begin with you, Jimmy. Looking at everything that is at play, and looking at whatever Ugandans have gone through, what they have experienced in terms of the breakdown of the economy, the indices of per capita income just like drifting so deep and stuff. What do you expect, especially in such a year, is when I am told even the government goes and prints more money. We can look at the 2011 election where we entered into double figures in terms of inflation. Do we expect the same this year? Because I know that every election year there's a lot of money in circulation.
Thankfully, we have the spokesperson of Bank of Uganda.
Yes, Jimmy.
Well,
we shall bring the spokesperson later to wrap it up.
The economy may struggle a lot because of all these, I don't know when too much money is given by all these people politicians. So there's bound to be, inflation may go up. But generally, the economy paints a very, rosy picture of the PDM. I don't know if its impact will be felt between this period.
No, PDM is purely political. It's not economic. I don't have the tools to make an economic analysis of PDM. But politically speaking, I should tell you.
But then it should produce results. I mean, if money is given, if all this, the parish development model is supposed to help people in the grassroots, the local people. So will it have all that money that is being sunk in the countryside, as it says, and they've given up on here in the capital? Will the people in the countryside feel the impact of the economy, have a better outside the campaigns?
Because I'll need guidance on this one. I have always had the impression that the Bank of Uganda is pretty independent as an institution, and that it's one of its core mandates. With that, is to manage inflation.
Okay. Yeah.
On the directives of its lenders, of its biggest lenders. Okay? And so tales have been made of people who went to the airplane to pick pallets of money. But I refuse to believe that those pallets are significant enough to grow our inflation figures to. This country is not that small. That because someone has picked two pallets. No. Because someone has picked two pallets, we have two-digit inflation. I'm also fairly certain that we have due diligence to external actors who might not, whose standards of due diligence might be a bit high, and that we owe it to them to manage that aspect of our economy. So I'm not very wary. I'm not very worried about. Yes, that's
Frank.
Yeah. So maybe to try and connect what Jimmy was talking about, the parish development model. If actually this product has actually worked for the NRM, like Chefe was saying, then that simply means that. Because normally members of parliament and also leaders at some other levels normally use money. So I would want to say that maybe PDM has softened the ground, and there will not be any need for, let's say, these members of parliament or even the president to pump in more cash into the population to try, let's say, and buy them, if that is the picture. So if parish development, PDM has actually worked, then this has softened ground, and maybe these people will be earning votes, not out of pumping a lot of money into the population, which might cause inflation. Yeah. So I really don't think that. Because who doesn't use money in elections, including even members of opposition, and where actually do they get this money? So I think that the only way as Ugandans how we can be able to run out of this is actually knowing that this hurts us. If you as a Ugandan, you think that your vote or your say is actually it should be bought by maybe, let's say, 10,000 or 20,000, I think the earlier the better, when we realize as Ugandans that actually our vote is not actually worth any penny. So people should vote manifestos that actually are looking forward to helping them as a society, and not actually buying them out with handouts.
The reality is very different on ground.
Yes. Well, voters will take as much money as you give. That means if you don't bring any, both parties, they will vote you.
I studied a little economics, so that might be the only problem here. But bumper harvests typically will bring down the price of food in the country. When the price of food comes down, of course, it might be good for some people. Of course, if you're pouring money down PDM, down 9 months, you will have maize. 12 months down the road, you will have all these other cereals that come with it. And then maybe a year, 2 years down the road, you'll get coffee harvest. So the bumper harvest will itself have an impact on the prices in the market. And the impact on the prices in the market will also have an impact on the actual earnings of the peasants, the very peasants you're trying to solve the problem for. The Bank of Uganda, in its very great wisdom, people here don't believe in it, but it's a great institution, tries to maintain the inflation band between 5%. And I think they will try and fight to keep it within that 5%. But deflation itself is capable of happening, and I think that's what will happen to food. Now, other things may not matter that much. If people have food in their homes, they might eat it through subsistence farming, but once those crops get to the market and they don't serve the intended purpose they did, the likely outcome is that you will have an angry peasant base of people who are promised that once you farm across 4 acres, you will earn 100 million shillings. They will certainly find themselves earning 10 million, even less. And that disgruntled base can be its own trick. But not to worry, not to despair. I always tell people the God of Uganda is a very difficult God to understand. Kenya went and pumped hundreds and hundreds of billion in their athletics. Uganda is the one reaping the medals today. COVID-19 came. In our lackadaisical manner, in our usual lack of effort, we still got around, and the God of Uganda somehow saved us through that.
We got a medal for managing it.
There's also the bigger elephant in the room, which is that all through the year we're going to be contending with the issue of transition, whether we like it or not. People keep thinking and saying, the man might drop dead or not. But that the heart of the question is what will happen in this transition plan, and where the people who are intending to take over power are not abetting in any way, whether it's Bobi Wine, whether it's the son Hotseat Nerugaba, whether it's General Mugisha Muntu, whether it's Shefe. We are going to see those people will still be at bay all through 2025.
Who is that US president who passed on recently? Jimmy Carter?
Yeah, Jimmy Carter.
So between Jimmy Carter and the other famous Secretary of State, Kissinger, do you know how many of the journalists who wrote the obituaries died before them? That's the problem with clock watching a head of state.
I know, like Raymond's grandmother.
Yes, it's quite challenging to clock watch a politician. Is dangerous.
We need to end this show here, and I hand you over to Julie Naloga to give us the news. Have a great weekend. Till next week. Goodbye.